DJ, and real quick, raise a hand. How many of us know someone that has had special ed services done or anything? We've all been affected with it somehow, some way. If we haven't, I'm sure we end up will eventually. So real quick, I'm going to run through the history of special ed and why we're still such in our infancy and how we are very still ignorant to the special ed process and all the disabilities that are out there, and we're still finding new ones every day. So 18th century and way before, everyone knows or heard of the Salem witch trials and everything like that. Salem witch trials were simply because they had disabilities and they thought they were like witches or demons or anything like that, and they would kill them simply. And before that, in big medieval times and all that stuff, anytime someone was disabled, they were looked at as everyone watched what's it called? Game of Thrones. And you have a little nymph, but it's just he has a disability, but he's looked at as a complete nobody, nearly. So before that, everything was thought it was demons and everything like that. And then here comes the 19th century. Finally, the House of Asylum or institutions. So we first see some of our institutions pop up. So when we have the students and kids that are born with disabilities, as bad as it sounds, they were just shipped off to an institution, never thought about it again. And now this House of Asylum, actually now, in 1909, National Committee for Mental Hygiene. This was kind of a spin-off, the first committee that actually formed about students with disabilities and children with disabilities. And now they're known as Mental Health America. And then also in 1909, the Juvenile Psychopathic Institute. This was the first institute in the world that is specific for children. It was in Chicago, and you think about it, it was only about 100 years ago, not a little over 100 years ago. When you really think about when public education actually began, it was in 1821 in Boston. So it took until 1909, it was almost 100 years until there was actually a school or an institution specific for children with disabilities. Then 2012 is the U.S. Children's Bureau. So this was not just for students with disabilities, this was for kids of all across America. Just understanding that they have rights too, and that if something was to go wrong or they're in a bad household or being neglected, they need to be pulled out, even maybe if it was going into an orphanage or something like that, but they need the extra help. So at least at this point, we're trying to figure out that kids are out there that need help and need it. So then, finally, the mid-1900s, starting like 1930s-ish, is the growth of child psychiatry. So this is when they actually understand and more research went into figuring out what are these different disabilities, why are they happening, what are they affecting, is it neurological, is it somewhere else in the body. So a lot of research went in mid-30s and the 40s. And finally, in 1963, Public Law 88 and 164. This is the first law actually instated for children with special needs. This is where the whole retard and mental retardation all words come out that we hear, and that everyone's trying to spread the word and the word now, which is fantastic, and I love that. But that was the first law that was instated, and so you think that's only 50 years later from when we actually recognized that people have disabilities. Then went on to 64, Council for Exceptional Children with Behavior Disorders. This is now known as CEC. I'm currently the president of CEC on Slippery Rock's campus. And it is a fantastic foundation and committee and group. I've gone to a bunch of national conferences about it. And they are to promote every single school everywhere and throughout the world and throughout the U.S. and always doing new research and figuring out how we can do anything to promote the youth of our with disabilities. Finally then, in 1973, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 was instated. This is pretty much that every student is entitled to free public education. And in 1975, Education for All Handicapped Children Act. That's kind of an amendment to the 1973 Rehab Act. And that's where FAPE was in place, which is a free public education. In 1997, IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, this is where we are now. And then in 2004, it was amended a little bit as IDEIA, and it just means the Improved Act. But this is where all public or special ed law is under. So anytime you hear anything in the classroom or here from college through the early intervention, which is birth, everything is found under IDEA. So when we think about it now, so public education started in 1821. We're now in 2018, like 200 years later. Truly special ed, and we've been recognized and has been in place in the public school, wasn't until 1975, 1973, and that wasn't even in all schools. So think about it, that's about the time that all of our parents were first instated. So we're now only in like the third generation, third generation of special ed, and what's been going on in education before. I mean, we have public education in 1821, but even before that, there was education. So just think about that just for a second, that we're so ignorant still to all these new things and how we can improve, like the differentiating education and the urban plan. So I'm going to leave you real quick with this, and you never truly know how it feels when something happens, or you never know how it truly feels until it happens to you. So do not judge, just be informed. So be aware of special ed and know that it's improper to use these terms. They're not disabled people, they're people with disabilities. So they're just like me and you. Everyone's the same. We just have some hiccups in our lives. So thank you.